Welkom bij een nieuwe aflevering van De Sofa van Bolero. Vandaag gaan we het hebben over Siemens en Alstom. En wat die twee met elkaar gemeen hebben, dat vertelt Andrea Gabellone ons. Andrea is Head of Global Equities Team binnen KBC Securities. Welcome, Andrea. Welcome at the Bolero offices. Thanks for making time for being here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Siemens, and we're going to talk about Alstom. Siemens published their Q2 fiscal year 2024 earnings last week, and so there were several moving parts to it. Perhaps the biggest disappointment was the performance of the Digital Industries division. How do you look at it? How do you feel about the earnings they reported?
Right, so first of all, thank you for having me today. Perhaps let's start with a bit of an overview of the different divisions to then give you a sense of what I'm thinking about Digital Industries. So looking at the order intake for the industrial business as a whole, it was actually in line or slightly above expectations, so that was a positive. However, there were some divergences across divisions. Looking at Digital Industries, to start, orders were down 12% year on year, which was slightly better than the market expected, but still, you can imagine, quite disappointing. And that was driven mainly by a weak Chinese market, but also Germany quite weak. So that was surely a negative. On the other hand, the smart infrastructure business, so it's all about grid automation and smart buildings, essentially. Orders were up 10% year on year, also above expectations, driven by electrification solutions. And finally, the mobility division was down 49% year on year in orders, but that was simply due to a tough comparable base versus last year, where they had a large order in the same period. Looking at the revenue progression, for the Digital Industries, revenues were down 11% year on year. Again, the Chinese market was the biggest downward driver, and the book-to-bill ratio also dropped below 1. Smart infrastructure and mobility were organically growing, so that's a positive. But now the biggest question going forward is the setup of Digital Industries for the full year. Looking at the guidance, Siemens did cut the guidance for Digital Industries organic revenue growth to -4% to -8%. They also cut the margin to 18% to 21%. So that was taken negatively by the market. However, we were kind of expecting such a cut, given that a peer, Rockwell Automation, also guided for similar growth declines for the full year. So that's let's say a mixed feeling for us. On the other hand, the smart infrastructure outlook was increased and mobility kept the same. So going into the full year, basically we are looking at how and if there will be a recovery in the Chinese market, in the Chinese automation market. For now, nobody knows. The company itself doesn't know. And the economic data signals that we are seeing are quite mixed. So it will be a question of the shape of the recovery, really.
Yeah, I hear some negatives, some positives. On their portfolio, they announced the divestment of Inomotics business for an EV of 3.5 billion. Are you positive about it? How do you feel about that?
Right, so Siemens is going through a portfolio optimization process, and we are definitely positive about the spin-off, considering that the initial rumored figure on the market was around 3 billion, so seeing this 3.5 is definitely a plus. But for me, the biggest question is, what are they going to do with the proceeds? In fact, is it going to be M&A? Is it going to be further share buyback? They have already a share buyback of around 6 billion over 5 years in place. They could accelerate that. I would see that positively, or doing M&A. But at this point, considering their low valuation, it would be quite difficult, in my view, to find accretive M&A. So.
Okay, yeah, you keep a close eye on the further progress of that portfolio for us. So all in all, how do you look at the full year, fiscal year 2024?
Right, so the shares are trading quite cheap compared to the industry, 12 times 2024 EV/EBITDA. So that's we find that valuation quite attractive, and for that reason, we are still buyers into the name, and I think the fair value is 187 euros. For me, Siemens is still a stock that I highly appreciate, and again, we are buyers into it because of the underlying secular drivers that they are exposed with, especially with regards to electrification and automation. Now, the big question clearly is the shape of the economic recovery, especially in China. But let's say at this valuation, we definitely think the shares are worth the price.
Okay, yeah. So we already touched on a little bit of the divisions of Siemens. So if you circle back to the divisional trends at Siemens, I would like to ask you some questions about Alstom as well, your opinion. They are competing with Siemens Mobility division. However, a lot is happening with the stock. Can you provide a little bit of background? What's the overview of the latest news?
Right, so Alstom has gone through a lot in the past 6 months, and perhaps a brief update on what happened. So Alstom reported now the second half and full year results recently, and they announced also their highly awaited deleveraging plan. But why did they have to do that? Well, 6 months ago, so at the first half results, they came out with an unexpected free cash flow loss, a negative free cash flow of more than 1 billion in the first half. And that was mainly driven by a rise in inventories, a delayed Aventra program in the UK, as well as net working capital buildup. So for that reason, the guidance had to be cut to negative free cash flow between 300 and 500 million compared to significantly positive before. So this was, of course, very negatively taken by the market, and we were also quite puzzled and quite disappointed by this data. However, now in the meantime, the stock basically has lost 40% more or less of market cap, and had to quickly come out with a plan to deleverage their balance sheet. So at the results, operationally speaking, results were not bad. They posted positive free cash flow of around 500 million. So that brings for the full year free cash flow to negative around 500 million, which is on the lower end of the guidance that they provided at the first half. So that's a positive, and the deleveraging plan is quite reassuring for us.
Yeah, how is that going to look at the deleveraging plan?
Right, so 3 different elements to it. So the first one is a rights issue of around 1 billion to be executed before September. Second, a hybrid bond with a 50% equity component, according to Moody's, of around 750 million, and 700 million of disposals, portfolio disposals, which they actually already completed, including the sale of their US signaling business to a competitor. So we are quite positive on the back of this plan, given that the net deleveraging effect should be around 2 billion and bring the company to a more solid financial position.
Okay. So, Andrea, I believe you were quite cautious as well, following the free cash flow warning, obviously, and you really wanted to see some confirmation regarding the action plan to shore up that balance sheet. Does the recent announcements make you more comfortable and you're more at ease with the plans they put forward?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my biggest concern was the potential downgrade to junk by Moody's, but it seems that this plan avoids any of that, at least in the short term, when, I mean, nothing is certain for sure. And I'm also positive on the rights issue, and at this point, on paper, I would be favorable to follow the rights issue, given the sound plan that they delivered and the continued, actually now operational successes that they delivered in the second half. So for me, I'm still cautious because I want to see the final terms of the rights issue, which will come out soon, we hope. So it will depend on the discount offered and the ratio at which you can subscribe to new shares. But for now, in principle, I'm quite positive on it. And also, given the very cheap valuation, I think the shares are attractive.
Okay, but so you're keeping an eye on when the prospectus is published for some more information.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks for all the insights, Andrea. Thanks for being here, making time to share your insights into Siemens and Alstom.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
Pleasure. Zo alweer een interessant sofa-gesprek met Andrea Gabellone, Head of Global Equities bij KBC Securities. Willen jullie meer informatie vinden over de beurs? Altijd op de hoogte blijven van belangrijkste marktnieuws? Volg dan zeker ons YouTube-kanaal door je te abonneren. Tot ziens.